Rejected by 20 women, this incredible minor girl accepted an unexpected love story revealed. Clay Thompson trudged through the muck and grime of his life, shoveling coal as the dust clung to his overalls like the weight of his loneliness. At 28, he towered over the others in the mine, renowned for his fortitude but suffocated by the shadows of rejection. 20 women had brushed him off, citing everything from his dusty uniform to their own aspirations, as if love could flourish under the weight of real-world expectations. Each rejection left a bitter taste, a reminder that he was defined not by who he was deep inside, but by the coal that stained his skin and hands. His mind raced, battling the doubts that came and went. What was wrong with him? He was strong, diligent, and deeply caring. Yet the laughter and warmth he sought felt miles away. Every time he tried to step into the light, he felt the cavern of his heart growing dimmer. The mountains surrounding their small Appalachian town echoed his despair, a constant reminder that for all his digging, he couldn't strike the vein of connection he craved. His second job at the garage was a feeble diversion, a means to make ends meet while wrestling with an unshakable identity crisis. Clay mechanically fixed pickup trucks, the staccato clanging of wrenches resonating with both his frustration and desire for something more. It was there he first laid eyes on Ella. She was different, vibrant, imaginative, and passionate, her eyes alive with a dream far beyond the confines of their shared reality. Immediately, he felt drawn to her, a flicker of hope surging in him for the first time in ages, but love felt unpredictable. The men at the diner snickered about her ambitions, a future that could whisk her away to colleges beyond their reach. Tension thrummed in Clay's chest like the turning gears of an engine. How could a coal miner ever hope to hold on to a woman destined for greatness? As Ella bubbled over with ideas of inventions and possibilities, he could not help but wonder if she would ever look at him and see more than just the dirt under his fingernails. Would his pride allow him to stand at her side when he felt like the misfit of a story that was already unfolding beyond his reach? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, and then, just as moments of genuine connection began to entwine them together, a whispered secret broke through Clay's reality like shattered glass. Ella's father had crafted machinery that revitalized their mining community, an invisible thread tying her to the very place that felt like both a prison and a refuge. What did it mean for them, for Clay's family? Could he face the possibility of losing her for something that now felt closer than ever, yet further away, as her roots pulled at her like a stubborn vine entwined in a crevice? Standing by the garage door as Ella prepared for a prestigious university interview, Clay felt an impending storm of anguish brewing inside him. The weight of realization crashed down, leaving him questioning his worth and battling the gnawing anxiety of what could slip through his fingers. Could he let love wash over the doubts? Would he ever rise out of the shadows, or was he doomed to be tethered to this relentless cycle of longing and despair? As she turned to walk away, the answer lingered like smoke in the air, an unresolved question hanging between them, ready to reshape everything they strive to become. The morning light crept through the garage windows, casting jagged shapes on the cluttered floor. Clay stood alone, surrounded by the familiar cacophony of tools and engines, but his thoughts felt as chaotic as the rusting machinery that encased him. Each tick of the clock echoed in his mind, rhythmically reminding him of his impending confrontation with Ella. As she prepared for the interview, he realized he could no longer remain a mere spectator in her life. Something had to change. He wiped his hands on a rag, his deep-set eyes tracing the outlines of the trucks in the bay. Mud-caked and oil-stained, they symbolized hard work and progress, two things he longed for in his own life. Each vehicle held a story of its own, and Clay felt a kinship with them. They were worn and weary but resilient, just like him. As he worked through his internal turmoil, he grasped a reality he had previously overlooked. He was not defined solely by the dirt under his fingernails or the coal dust that clung to him. He was more than just a miner, he was a dreamer, a fixer, and now, maybe even someone worthy of striving for more. In that moment of clarity, he realized that the shackles he felt, his past, his profession, were self-imposed. The world around him was brimming with possibilities, and Ella, with her electric energy, was the perfect catalyst for his transformation. Could he dare to believe that he, too, might venture beyond these confines? Suddenly, he envisioned what could be a future where he could stand beside her, not shrouded by insecurity but radiant with his own ambitions. The idea of reinventing himself began to crystallize. Clay grabbed a notepad and started jotting down ideas, a blueprint of his aspirations. His list of goals poured onto the page: learn new skills, take some classes at the technical school, maybe even explore engineering. He scribbled things that seemed daunting and boundless. Perhaps he could even create machinery that would support their community, just like Ella's father. The thought sent a spark through him, igniting a fire where there had only been embers of doubt. But while he envisioned his future, a nagging voice crept into his mind, urging caution. What if Ella would reject this new version of him? What if his aspirations didn't align with hers? Confronting Ella with this part of himself felt as terrifying as stepping into the mine without a helmet. Yet he knew he couldn't hide any longer. Taking a deep breath, Clay set the notepad down, determination solidifying in his gut. It was time to talk to her. He needed to reveal his aspirations, the depth of his feelings, and most importantly, the newfound commitment within himself to change, if she would have him. He realized he had to communicate his newfound resolve, not only to her but to himself. As he stepped outside to find Ella, a cool breeze rustled the leaves, whispering secrets of change and potential. But the moment he spotted her, still surrounded by the shadows of their small town, the familiar doubts clawed at him. Would she accept him as a man on the verge of transformation, or would she turn away, leaving him to grapple with his own inadequacies once more? With each step toward her, Clay felt both the weight of his past and the thrill of potential thrumming in his chest. The conversation that awaited felt urgent, as though it could shatter the barriers he had built. But what would happen if she didn't see that spark of determination in him? The time had come to face not just her, but himself and the uncertain future that hung in the balance. Would he be able to own his journey, or would he shrink back into the shadows once again? As he approached, the answer felt tantalizingly close, yet perilously out of reach. Clay's heart raced as he walked towards Ella, each footstep echoing in his mind like a clock ticking down to a deadline. He had crafted all these aspirations, formulated a plan for change, yet here he stood, feeling utterly unprepared. His eyes locked onto her, illuminated by the golden hue of the morning sun, and he felt the weight of both hope and fear collide within him. Would she see the man he wished to become, or the miner he had always been? As he neared her, he noticed the focused furrow of her brow, the determination that fueled her pursuit of success. It reminded him of the trucks he cherished. Each dent and scratch told a tale of hard work and relentless striving. What stories would they pen together if she could see him beyond his present self? Ella, he managed as he approached, his voice steady but his insides twisting with anxiety. The moment he spoke, her gaze snapped up, curiosity flickering across her face. "Clay. You made it," she replied, a smile breaking through her concentration. Clay took this as a sign, a flicker of encouragement amidst his doubt. "I wanted to talk," he muttered, hesitating. This was it. The vulnerability he had guarded so tightly now hung before him like a fragile thread. "I'm all ears," she said, wiping her hands on a towel before giving him her undivided attention. Clay inhaled deeply, the cool morning air filling his lungs, then exhaled slowly, summoning courage he wasn't sure he possessed. "I've been thinking a lot," he began, his voice wavering slightly as he searched for the right words. "About where I'm at and where I want to be. I feel stuck, Ella. Like I've been coasting through life, waiting for something to change instead of making it happen myself." He watched closely as Ella's expression shifted from curiosity to understanding. "That's a huge realization, Clay. It's not easy to admit that." A spark of determination surged through him. "I'm ready to take the plunge. I want to learn new skills, maybe even go back to school. Engineering, perhaps. I can't keep being the guy who just reminds everyone of the past. I want to build, invent, do something meaningful." "Wow," she breathed, visibly impressed. "That's a big step. What prompted this change?" Facing her, Clay felt his resolve strengthen. "You. Watching you chase your dreams inspired me. I see the passion you have, and I realized I've been in the shadows far too long. I want to stand beside you, not as someone filled with self-doubt but as an equal." A moment of silence stretched between them, weighted with a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty. He felt exposed, like a truck stripped bare, engine parts laid out for the world to see. "What if I told you that I've been feeling stuck, too?" Ella replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Clay's heart leapt. "I'm terrified that I won't be good enough when I finally get the opportunity. Maybe I need someone beside me to take that leap." His mind raced. Here was shared vulnerability forming a bridge between them. They were both standing on the brink of change, haunted by their insecurities yet emboldened by the prospect of stepping into the unknown together. "Then let us figure it out," he proposed, meeting her eyes, which shimmered with an ambitious glint. "We'll take the leap together. I can't promise you it'll be easy, but I can promise I'll be there." As Ella's lips curled into a knowing smile, Clay felt the exhilarating embrace of possibility wrap around him, a warmth igniting the embers of his ambition further. But the breakthrough brought its own unease. There was a flicker of doubt as she regarded him with a new intensity. "What if we go through this journey, and I'm still not what you need?" "Then we'll learn from it," he replied firmly. Her concern echoed his own fears, but it also deepened the connection between them. Together they could confront transformation, whatever it may bring. Yet as they stood at the precipice of this new chapter, a thought struck Clay. The road of reinvention was fraught with challenges. Would they emerge empowered, or would their attempts only deepen wounds have failed? Expectations? "Are you ready for the unknown?" he asked, a challenging undertow laced in his tone. Ella met his gaze unwaveringly. "Are you?" The air hung between them thick with potential, the future they fantasized about dangling just within reach, but teetering on the edge of uncertainty. Would this shared journey foster growth, or would it unearth more insecurities? Clay's heart beat louder in his chest as they extended their hands toward the future together, aware that the path ahead would not be easily navigable. But embarking on this adventure meant confronting more than just their individual fears. It meant facing the daunting reality of what their union could become. As the sun climbed higher, casting vibrant light over the horizon, Clay wondered, was he ready for what lay ahead, or would this newfound determination crumble under the pressure of reality? The moment felt electric, charged with the weight of their choices, and he realized they were now intertwined in a way neither of them fully understood. He took her hand, and the very act felt like standing at the brink of a cliff, ready to leap, not knowing the depths they might discover. Clay felt a tremor course through him as he squeezed Ella's hand, a gesture laden with both tenderness and the unsteady anticipation of what would follow. Their pledge to confront their fears hand in hand felt monumental, yet the overwhelming reality of uncertainty loomed like shadows in a dimly lit tunnel. "What do we do first?" Ella's question broke the silence, her voice peppered with eagerness, tinged with the same apprehension that tangled his thoughts. He opened his mouth to answer but found the words tangled in his throat. What did he want? His mind was a flurry of possibilities, a whirlwind. He envisioned classrooms filled with blueprints, theory, and creativity. He imagined himself among peers, challenging the status quo, forging connections. Then, doubt crept back, whispering that he was simply a minor, and that image of himself felt too distant. "Maybe we should start by setting some tangible goals," he suggested, trying to project confidence he didn't quite feel. "I could look into community college courses, see what programs are available." "Engineering?" she prompted, her eyes sparkling as if she were seeing the outline of his future. "Yes. That's the plan." Saying it out loud felt impactful, like laying the first bricks of a foundation. "But what if you get there and it turns out this isn't what you want?" Her question struck closer to home than he expected. Clay swallowed hard. Was he doing this out of genuine desire, or was it merely a reaction to Ella's encouragement? "I'll figure that out when I get there," he replied with grim determination, trying to convince himself as much as her. Ella tapped her temple contemplatively, something about the gesture filled him with warmth. "I think it's essential that we both define our paths individually first. That way, when we come back together, we can support one another from a place of strength." The thought sent a ripple of unease through him. What if their pursuits diverged rather than united them? What if the person he was meant to become wasn't ready to be with the ambitious woman who inspired him? "Okay. So you'll explore your options too, right?" he muttered, trying to regain some measure of control. "Definitely," Ella replied, her confidence spilling into every word. I want to look into mentorships and internships now that I've graduated. The field I want to engage in is so different from what I'm used to, but I feel it's calling me. Clay nodded, feeling the weight of their shared commitment. They were stepping away from the confines of comfortable predictability, yet that very act created honesty in their connection. But the tickling doubt lingered, wrapping around his resolve a reminder of how often he had faltered in the past. After a moment, he glanced at her. No matter what happens, let us promise to be real with each other about our progress and our struggles. I don't want to mask my fears or disappointments just because things get tough. Agreed. She smiled, but it was a smile that held the tremor of anxiety weaving through her own vulnerability. Clay fell into thought as he observed the landscape around them, the blooming trees and animated townsfolk filled with purpose, all marching toward their goals. Did he belong there? He felt like an imposter, a miner who had wandered into a world that was more advanced than he could understand. Days passed over the following weeks, each filled with his research into academia and her relentless pursuit of her own dreams. Distractions pulled at him relentlessly. Self-doubt crept back into his mind, largely uninvited but wholly persistent. He couldn't shake the thought that he'd fall back into the familiar rut and endless cycle of wanting yet never acting. Then one particularly quiet evening, as he sifted through his thoughts, he caught a glimpse of an advertisement for an upcoming workshop entitled Reinventing Your Career. His heart raced. Could this be a way to elevate the ambition he felt swirling within? Yet, attending alone felt terrifying. What if he failed to make connections? What if he learned he was unfit for this new path? Everything he feared collided in that solitary moment. As he hovered over the workshop brochure, a surge of defiance surged through him, overshadowing the insidious whispers of trepidation. This could be the catalyst for his transformation. He could no longer afford to let fear dictate whether he stepped into the light or remain in shadows, bound to a past he sought to escape. Clay reached for his phone, fingers trembling slightly as he navigated the registration process. He was ready to confront the unknown. But deep within, a lingering question echoed: was it really ambition he pursued, or the acceptance that came with it? And what if his hopes for a future with Ella hinged on the outcome of this new venture? With the registration complete, he sat back, heart pounding, uncertainty not entirely diminished but rather replaced by a newfound commitment. The next step was clear, yet it came heavy with the knowledge that the journey had only just begun. But as dawn approached, a thought clawed at the edges of his mind: what if this leap of faith didn't land him where he imagined? What awaited him on the other side of commitment? The morning after he registered for the workshop dawned bright and full of promise, but Clay awoke with a knot in his stomach. His resolve felt as fleeting as dreams slipping away at sunrise. How naive he had been to believe that signing up could smooth the jagged edges of his anxiety. Now that he had made the leap, new, insistent questions clawed their way to the surface of his mind. What if he was just pretending? What if his dreams were nothing more than a mirage that would evaporate when faced with real scrutiny? Determined not to succumb to self-doubt, he took a deep breath, anchoring himself in the present. Pulling out his planner, he meticulously organized his week. The workshop was just days away, offering an opportunity he needed to seize. As he mapped out sessions he wanted to attend, he noticed how each encompassed essential elements of his development: listening skills, networking, and personal branding. For the first time, he saw the potential of each class transforming himself, each labeled activity a brick paving his path forward. But even this careful planning wasn't enough to quell the flickers of apprehension. He needed something more to ground himself. He picked up the phone and texted Ella, eager for her input. "Hey, I registered for that workshop. Want to bounce some ideas about our goals before it starts?" Almost instantly, her response appeared. "Absolutely. I think I've figured out my first steps too. Let us meet later?" Her excitement was infectious, it ignited a spark within him. Clay's heart lightened at the thought of confiding in her, sharing not just goals but vulnerabilities. They could navigate this uncertain terrain together. Later that evening, as they met at their favorite cafe, the scent of freshly brewed coffee wrapping around them, he looked into Ella's eyes and saw a reflection of his own hope mingled with fear. "I'm scared, Ella," he admitted, stirring his coffee absently. "What if I go there and everyone's better than me? What if I'm just not cut out for this?" "Fear is a natural part of growth," she replied, her voice steady yet soft. "You're redefining yourself.
It's intimidating.
But remember, everyone there likely has their own doubts. You're taking steps that many people fear to even consider. Her words anchored him, weaving a mantra in his mind. The attendant atmosphere of the cafe, with its chill and chatter, felt both nuanced and grounding. It reminded him that this journey was not merely about ambition, it was about resilience. They exchanged thoughts about their aspirations, discussing networking strategies and potential hurdles. Clay began to feel a shift within himself, empowered by their dialogue, almost as if Ella's dreams amplified his own. Her ambition reignited the ember of resolve within him, each idea shared kindling a sense of belonging he hadn't realized he craved. By the time the sun hung low in the sky, painting the cafe with warm golden hues, Clay felt a surge of clarity. This workshop would not be a solitary venture that exposed weaknesses, it was a step toward cultivating strengths. More than that, he recognized that the essence of this transformation lay not only in ambition but in learning to embrace vulnerability. It set the stage for authentic connections. That night, as he lay in bed, he thought of the workshop. It wasn't simply an event, it was a gateway, and he was ready to step through it despite the uncertainty lurking beyond. To confront the fears and hesitations that had tethered him for so long. As the hour drew near, a question lingered in his mind, wrapping around his resolve like ivy. What would he learn about himself when faced with the challenge? Could the workshop result in unearthing hidden talents he had yet to recognize? With a sense of determination that pulsed through him, Clay pulled the blanket closer, bracing himself for what would come next. But as he slipped into sleep, his mind raced with possibilities and a nagging fear that remained just beyond reach. Would he truly have what it takes to emerge renewed on the other side? The workshop day arrived, pulsating with an energy that felt almost electric. Clay stood before the venue, his pulse quickening as he looked at the modern architecture towering above. It felt like a gate to a different world, one where he could transform from the hesitant man he had been into something more formidable. He inhaled sharply, the crisp morning air biting at his skin. As he fought to calm the storm inside, his eyes scanned the crowd filtering into the building. Each person seemed self-assured, engaged in animated conversations, their laughter flowing like music. Clay swallowed hard, feeling like an outsider glancing in. What was he doing here? The unflattering self-doubt bubbled up again, bringing back the haunting questions he had wrestled with before. Challenging his nerves, he entered, the shifting energy converging on him. The first session was about listening skills, a concept he realized he had taken for granted. The speaker emphasized that true listening was more than hearing words, it was about understanding the emotion behind them. This idea struck Clay like thunder, illuminating a facet of himself he had never fully explored. In a world where speaking often overshadowed listening, he began to ponder how many conversations he had stalled out of fear. During group exercises, he found himself paired with a woman named Sasha, who seemed equally anxious. They practiced active listening, and with each round, Clay noticed how his focus shifted from himself to her. He began to ask questions that compelled her to open up, and to his surprise, he found genuine interest fluttering inside him as she spoke. For the first time, he felt empowered by exploring someone else's story, by making space for her voice. After several enlightening hours, the workshop moved into networking strategies. The facilitator explained how to pitch oneself effectively without succumbing to the imposter syndrome that often haunted ambitious individuals. Clay jotted down notes, the urgency of his aspiration rekindling deep-seated ambitions he had buried under layers of self-doubt. As participants broke into smaller groups to practice their pitches, Clay felt the tension rising in his chest again. He hesitated, a pang of insecurity gripping him. "You can do this," he whispered to himself, envisioning Ella's earlier encouragement. He approached a small cluster of participants, heart racing as he introduced himself. To his surprise, they welcomed him with enthusiasm. As he shared his story, he felt the chains of fear begin to uncoil. Clay articulated his hopes and dreams with more conviction than he had anticipated, experience turning the narrative from a recital of inadequacies into a tapestry of purpose. By the day's end, Clay felt a shift within him. Confidence had nudged out his paralyzing fears in incremental bursts. Although moments of self-doubt still flickered like distant stars, they no longer held dominion over his perception. He glanced around the room at the people he had connected with in that moment. He genuinely felt a sense of community among strangers. Yet, amid the success of the day, an unsettling thought crept in. Could this newfound confidence withstand the inevitable challenges that awaited him outside these walls? What if he returned to the same patterns he had broken today? As he prepared to leave, he gathered his belongings, glancing at the empty seats that had once felt so intimidating. In the solitude of that space, the question returned with a sharper edge: would he truly harness this momentum, or would old habits and fears hold him back? Clay stepped outside into the evening glow, his heart swirling with unanswered questions and possibilities. In his mind raced one nagging curiosity: what would tomorrow look like, now that he had glimpsed the potential of his own evolution? Clay awoke the next morning with a sense of anticipation weaving through his body. The sunlight streamed through his window, illuminating the remnants of yesterday's growth. Yet, the nagging uncertainty still loomed within him, a shadow lingering at the edges of his newfound resolve. Would it be enough to push through the walls he had built around himself for so long? Over a hurried breakfast, he mulled over the events of the workshop. The power of listening had opened a door he hadn't even known existed. His thoughts wandered back to Sasha, her voice sparking a flicker of inspiration in him. For the first time, he realized that cultivating genuine connections began with a willingness to embrace his vulnerabilities rather than masking them. Determined to reinforce the experience, he made an impulsive decision. Today would not simply be a day of returning to normal routines. He would seek out growth, finding opportunities to practice the skills he'd just acquired. With that determination, he set out, his mind racing with ideas on where to apply his new approach. At work, Clay felt the familiar weight of his old insecurities pressing against him, ready to pull him back to complacency. The conference room was buzzing with colleagues sharing updates on projects. He typically would have kept his head down, merely contributing from the sidelines, parroting the unoriginal thoughts that had become his safety net, but today, he took a deep breath and stepped forward, suggesting a new direction for an ongoing project. The nods from his peers and the expression of disbelief on his manager's face was a strange, invigorating medicine. He traded their expected indifference for attentive engagement. It was exhilarating, yet grounding at the same time. When the meeting concluded, Clay found himself gravitating towards a colleague, Mark, known for his well-articulated ideas. Instead of allowing his nerves to silence him, he initiated a conversation, carefully active listening as Mark elaborated on his thoughts. Clay engaged by asking insightful questions, drawing out nuances that revealed layers to Mark's expertise. The conversation flowed effortlessly, both men contributing ideas, both strengthening their professional rapport. Yet, even in this moment of success, a fragment of doubt seeped through: would this newfound persona be perceived as contrived? Could he sustain this growth, or was it a momentary flicker of light against the encompassing darkness of self-doubt? Later that afternoon, as he took a break, Clay overheard a conversation between two co-workers discussing a mentorship program that would connect junior employees with seasoned leaders. The notion of mentorship resonated with him, echoing back to the workshop facilitator's point about the importance of seeking guidance. His heart pounded at the thought this could be the next step in uncovering further potential. But the worry snaked back in: what if he didn't measure up? What if he became the subject of scorn or ridicule? Clay had to confront this reality: growth demanded risk, and risk invited vulnerability. He wrestled with the morning's momentum, considering how to apply it through authentic engagement and openness. Resolutely, he decided to apply for the mentorship program, wrestling with the gnawing fear as he submitted his application. He knew that he couldn't let fear dictate his path. This was not merely about a professional transition, it was a deep dive into self-acceptance and realization. Clay glanced at his phone, heart racing with every second that ticked by. Could this be the beginning of something transformative? Would he find the strength to harness his potential? As he exited the office, he paused, contemplating the challenges that loomed on the horizon. Would he embrace this unknown with the same fervor he had felt during the workshop? Tomorrow awaited with new trials, and with that came an unsettling excitement. Each decision he made today would ripple into the future. How far he was willing to step into the uncomfortable remained to be seen. Would he soon discover that the most profound transformation comes from the courage to be vulnerable? The next morning, the sun peeked through the blinds, but Clay's rest had been far from peaceful. He awoke, mind cycling through uncertainties, feeling the weight of yesterday's risks. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown, pressuring him to transform his motivations into actions. Today was pivotal. He had set his course for growth, but uncertainty clung to him like a shadow. He dressed with purpose, carefully selecting a shirt that seemed to reflect his intent for transformation. As he walked to work, a medley of thoughts rippled through him.
Would his participation in the mentorship program lead to meaningful change?
Or would it expose the hollow parts of him he feared? Upon arrival, the office buzzed with its usual energy, a hum of conversations and clacking keyboards. Clay's heart raced as he faced the team, but this time he determined not to retreat. After settling at his desk, he glanced over at his cup, the coffee cooling beside him, a reminder of his need for fortitude. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of the exhilarating spark he'd felt during yesterday's conversations. The first part of the morning passed with standard work tasks, but the mentorship program loomed large in his mind like a palpable entity.
Eventually, the emails that often acted as a safety barrier began to irritate him.
Their lack of substance felt confining. Today, he sought interaction, the kind that could inspire or challenge. In a moment of clarity, he decided to approach his manager, Liz. Her expertise had been a guiding light for many, yet he had always felt hesitant to seek her thoughts directly.
With each step toward her office, he battled the instinct to retreat. Could he be seen as demanding or intrusive?
But, no more second-guessing. He knocked on her door. "Clay, come in," she called, her voice warm as she glanced up from her computer.
"Hey, Liz. Do you have a minute?"
"Of course,
what's on your mind?"
The conversation flowed effortlessly as he shared his thoughts about the mentorship program. To his surprise, Liz responded with enthusiasm, sharing her own experiences in such initiatives. The dialogue allowed him to lean into his experiences while drawing out valuable insights from her. Her praise felt genuine, igniting a flicker of confidence within him. As the minutes passed, he dared to engage more, asking how she had navigated challenges.
Liz illustrated the importance of risking vulnerability in professional growth.
Her words resonated deeply with him, casting shadows on the self-imposed barriers he had relied upon for comfort. Yet, as he returned to his desk, he couldn't ignore the creeping doubt that twisted in his stomach.
Would any of that matter if he failed in the mentorship program? The complexity swirled. What if his vulnerability was ultimately met with indifference?
The day progressed, but Clay's mood shifted with every passing moment. His interactions felt like a pendulum swinging between courage and fear.
In the afternoon, an email came through, an invitation for a brief meeting with the mentorship committee.
His heart skipped. This could be it, but with it came a realization: the upcoming opportunity demanded he confront deeper layers of himself. As he prepared for the meeting, he envisioned his peers, imagining them assessing him with scrutiny. Would his ideas shine, or would he stumble in front of experienced professionals? Each breath was heavy with anticipation, pulling him toward a moment of profound exposure.
Would he stand firm at that moment and showcase his readiness to embrace this path, or would self-doubt cause him to falter?
As he paced before the mirror, adjusting his tie, he wrestled with the tension within. The stakes were rising. In just an hour, he would step into a room filled with possible futures. A fork in the road awaited him, and he now understood that growth does not rest in comfort zones.
It lingered in the expanse of uncertainty. What revelations would he uncover about himself? Would he embrace this pivotal moment or retreat into the safety of silence?
The questions loomed heavy,
echoing loudly in his thoughts.
Clay sat on the edge of his bed, the tie in his hand feeling heavier than it should have. He stared at his reflection, searching for the strength he needed to face the mentorship committee.
Questions looped in his mind like a relentless cycle. Was he enough to offer valuable insight? Did his experiences truly matter in the broader professional landscape?
He could sense the minutes slipping away, and with each tick, the weight of expectation grew heavier. With a final deep breath, he slipped the tie around his neck, tightening it until he felt a rush of clarity. Today, he renounced the fear that had clouded his judgment for too long. It was time to confront the doubts head-on. The drive to the meeting was a blur of self-talk, each encouraging phrase echoing in the enclosed space of his car. He had to believe he had something to contribute. Entering the building, he moved through the familiar corridors, but today they seemed different. The energy felt charged, almost electric, and it ignited something inside him. He arrived early, positioning himself in the outer waiting area. The chairs were filled with other participants' faces mirroring his own internal struggle. Each one bore the marks of determination, yet the air was thick with a shared anxiety that made the atmosphere palpable. As he sat, he overheard snippets of conversation around him, people discussing strategies, sharing anecdotes about previous mentorship experiences.
Clay felt a tug of envy. Were they more experienced, or simply more confident? The self-doubt clawed at him, demanding attention. But he quickly redirected his thoughts, reminding himself of Liz's words about vulnerability being a strength. When his name was called, a wave of adrenaline surged through him. He stood, smoothing out his shirt as he entered the meeting room. The faces of the committee looked up at him, their expressions a mix of expectation and neutrality. He felt the intensity of their scrutiny, each eye bore into him as though dissecting his very essence.
"Clay, welcome." The chairperson extended a cordial smile, but it didn't fully ease the tension swirling in his gut. "Please, share what you hope to gain from this mentorship." With a deep breath, he launched into his prepared statements, striving for clarity amidst the flutter of nerves. The words flowed out, initially shaky but gaining momentum as he spoke about his aspirations and the growth he desired.
He could sense the committee's interest, their heads nodding in understanding.
The anticipation that had once felt suffocating now transformed into a strange exhilaration, but then the questions came. They were probing and steeped in challenge, each one pulling apart his statements to test the foundations of his confidence and resolve.
"Can you give us an example of where you've applied this learning in the past?"
One committee member queried, a narrow brow raised to eye. In that moment, he felt a jolt of fear.
Had he oversold himself? Exposed weaknesses in his narrative?
He paused, heart drumming loudly in his ears.
But then, a flicker of inspiration ignited.
He recalled a recent project that had tested him, a failure that became a learning opportunity. He spoke candidly about the missteps and the growth that followed, revealing layers of his character he'd kept under lock and key. As he shared, he felt the grip of fear loosening. He was no longer just presenting an idealized version of himself, but rather, the flawed human behind the ambition.
Vulnerability took center stage, and he embraced it. After what felt like an eternity, the meeting concluded. Clay left the room jarred yet liberated, a cocktail of uncertainty and relief bubbling within him.
Walking back down the hall, his mind swirled with what just transpired.
Had he truly conveyed his potential? Would they see him for who he was, or revert back to judging him on the surface? As he took a seat in the waiting area again, he realized he might have just unlocked a piece of himself he hadn't known awaited discovery. An unsettling thrill coursed through him. He might not have all the answers yet, but this was the first step toward unearthing his truth. What had initially felt like a daunting confrontation now held the promise of deeper revelations, but just as hope began to bloom within him, he caught sight of an email notification. Liz had sent him a message. The subject line sent a chill racing down his spine, "Follow up on our previous discussion." In that moment, the stakes had risen yet again. Would Liz's feedback bolster his newfound confidence, or would it expose new vulnerabilities he'd have to confront? As Clay's eyes widened at the notification, his heart dropped. The email from Liz felt like the culmination of his fears, an unavoidable confrontation with uncertain judgment. Yet he knew he could not evade it forever. Taking a deep breath, he clicked open the message. "Hi Clay, I wanted to follow up on your thoughts about the mentorship program. I'm excited to hear you took that step, and I think it could be a great opportunity for you. However, I want to discuss your recent contributions in our team meetings. Merely sharing ideas isn't enough. I need you to step up and take ownership of your projects. This is how you'll foster real growth moving forward." Clay read the words carefully, an array of emotions sparking within him: disappointment, determination, even clarity. Liz's feedback was tough love, yet it felt necessary. He realized she wasn't just critiquing, she was illuminating a path for him. The demand for ownership resonated deeply. Finally, he understood that the only way to dispel the fears that shrouded him was through active participation and accountability. It was liberating, a challenge accepted. Clay felt a newfound confidence ignite within him. He could forge a meaningful path through commitment. He recalled the workshop's message: growth meant embracing vulnerability, not hiding behind a facade of uncertainties. He had faced the mentorship committee with authenticity and emerged empowered. Now he needed to bring that tenacity into his workplace. As the days unfolded, Clay embraced his role with vigor and innovation. He took Liz's advice to heart, volunteering to lead a new project focused on optimizing the efficiency of their mining equipment. It was a chance to channel his aspirations into concrete results.
He conducted thorough research, digging into engineering principles and seeking feedback from his team in brainstorming sessions. With each passing day, his ownership grew exponentially, transforming the way he approached challenges. The fear that once dictated his actions had morphed into a fierce desire to learn and grow. Ella constantly cheered for him from the sidelines, and their partnership flourished. They shared late-night conversations filled with insights about their respective journeys, often weaving ambition and vulnerability into their discussions. Each moment deepened their bond and reinforced his commitment to self-improvement. One pivotal afternoon, while Clay presented his project proposal to Liz and the senior management, he stood taller than ever before, fueled by a sense of purpose. As he outlined the framework he had meticulously prepared, he noticed nodding heads and engaged expressions. The atmosphere bristled with possibilities. He had prepared for this moment, not solely in anticipation of their approval but as a reflection of his growth. When Liz turned to him and remarked, "This is an impressive plan, Clay. I'm proud of your progress," the recognition felt powerful. It was validation he had yearned for, but more importantly, it confirmed he was stepping into his role authentically, not as a minor constrained by his past, but as a competent individual worthy of aspirations. Months passed, and the project rolled out successfully, leading to significant improvements in their operations and community contributions. Clay's career trajectory swayed against self-doubt like a confident dance. His ambitions became a reality, and they opened doors he had never envisioned. Meanwhile, he also completed his first classes at the technical school, gaining proficiency in engineering fundamentals, which further fueled his aspirations. He was redefining not just his professional identity, but his very self. His voice echoed something resembling authority now, rooted in genuine experiences and articulated goals. The other miners, once viewing him as merely a coal-dusted laborer, began seeking his insight. Instead of solitude, he found camaraderie. One radiant summer evening, he stood at the mouth of the mine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and violet. Ella walked up beside him. Her presence a warm anchor, and they marveled at the beauty. The same mountains that once felt oppressive now promised a horizon illuminating possibilities. "Look at us," she said softly, intertwining her fingers with his. "We are journeying into the unknown together." Clay gripped her hand tighter, gratitude flooding his heart. He felt transformed. Both were forging paths filled with ambition. Love was no longer a distant dream overshadowed by despair. It pulsated around them like a living force, thriving on both their shared vulnerability and newfound strengths. They exchanged ideas, dreams, and laughter, as they envisioned a future where they could stand together, matched not by titles or pasts, but by ambition and the courage to nurture their dreams. With each brave stride away from old identities and into new futures, Clay proved himself capable of conquering the doubts that once silenced his voice. He had transformed in ways he could never have predicted, emerging as a respected engineer and a partner who could face life's challenges head-on. The journey had just begun, not only to overcome vulnerabilities but to celebrate them as strengths, making room for love and acceptance. Now, it's your turn. What will you conquer today? You need to subscribe now so you don't miss more incredible stories of personal transformation and triumph. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, helping us reach those who also need inspiration. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this ending. You never know how your words might motivate someone else. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share, your support is crucial.